Standing at the foot of the mountain and putting on my backpack, I am reminded of lines from Vysotski's song The Mountain Climber. I asked you, why are you going up the mountain? And you were going to the top, and you were struggling. You can see Mount Elbrus from a plane too. You laughed and took it with you. Elbrus, two-headed giant, rising at 5,642 meters above sea level, the highest mountain peak in Russia and Europe, which is included in the list of the highest peaks of the planet. Only having risen from the foot to the top, you can fully feel the greatness and beauty of Mount Elbrus, and at the same time test your strength and fortitude. Contrary to logic and common sense, we climbed Mount Elbrus in winter, during New Year holidays, when the ice and weather conditions were the most difficult, and there was simply no time to acclimatize. For the ascent, we chose the classical route of south face with the category of complexity 2A. The route starts from Azau Glade and goes through the high mountain shelter, Bachki. Further on through the Pastakov rocks and the so-called skewed shelf, it leads to the saddle between the peaks. Then it is possible to get to any of the two peaks, in our case the higher western peak. But that's all the plans, but for now we went up counting the first meters and staring at the summit. Overhead, sparkling in the blindingly bright sun, the cabins of the Pendulum Coaster Road were floating overhead. Next to us, experienced skiers were flying down the slopes raising snow splashes, and novice riders were sliding on their heels, smiling at us and sincerely not understanding why we were backpacking up, if we can cheerfully and quickly go down. The first successful ascent to one of the peaks of Mount Elbrus was made as part of a scientific expedition organized by the Russian Academy of Sciences at the suggestion and general guidance of the head of the Caucasus Fortified Line, General Georgy Arsenievich Emanuel. The expedition was attended by prominent scientists of the 19th century, Professor Adolf Kupfer, founder of the main geophysical observatory of St. Petersburg, physicist Emil Lenz, zoologist Eduard Menetries, founder of the Russian Entomological Society, botanist Karl Mayr, artist and architect Joseph Bernardazzi, who made the first picture of Elbrus, and Hungarian traveler János Besz. The very first shelter for mountain climbers on the southern slope of Mount Elbrus appeared in 1909 at an altitude of 3,200 meters. It was a stone semi-dugout for 5 people built by the Caucasus Mountain Society. In 1932, at an altitude of 4,200 meters was built wooden building with 40 seats for tourists and climbers, the Shelter of 11, and a weather station, the Shelter of 9, was built nearby. In the 1980s, 100 meters from the end station of the ropeway, Garabashi, was built Shelter, Barrels, which is more than 10 6-bed insulated carriages and a kitchen. Nowadays, it is one of the main starting points for tourists and climbers making ascents on Elbrus. In the morning, it was decided to make a trial hike to the Pastakov rocks from the high mountain shelter of Bachki, chosen as our base camp, to explore the route. The sun was shining in the bright blue, bottomless sky. A blindingly white fern cliff creaked underfoot, and a snowstorm lay across it, sparkling and playing in the sunlight. The thin and crystal clear air seemed to be reflected as a crystal ringing in my ears. We were surrounded by a lifeless yet breathtakingly beautiful world of ice, a world of snow-covered mountain peaks. At the former Shelter 11, there is a rock with memorial tablets of the dead climbers on the slopes of Mount Elbrus, serving as a mute reminder to future climbers that the mountains require the utmost and respectful attitude to themselves. Despite the relative simplicity of climbing Elbrus, each year, according to various estimates, 10 to 20 people die on it, which amounts to about 80% of all accidents in Elbrus region. Among the dead and injured there are not only tourists, amateurs, but also experienced and trained athletes with the appropriate mountain experience. Main objective dangers on the ascending routes are numerous glacier cracks and weather conditions. The night before the ascent passed in a half-dream. Sleep was prevented by the mountain sickness and thoughts about the upcoming ascent. In the evening, the clouds hung over Mount Elbrus and the wind increased, so the weather window for the summit climb was closing. But still hoping for the best, I went out into the cold night darkness, where only a few distant stars and a howling wind were my lonely companions. Dawn caught me at the ridge of Shepherd's Rocks, where the so-called bottle ice begins, polished by the winds into a glass-like smooth slope, so strong that sharp crampons leave no scratches on it, and an ice axe can barely penetrate the upper edge. Even an experienced climber has practically no chance of crashing down the slope and stopping his fall. On reaching the oblique shelf, the clouds finally covered both summits. The wind reached truly hurricane-like levels, knocking me down and penetrating me to the bone, even though my backpack and down jacket. To continue climbing in such conditions was fatally dangerous, and the only right decision in such a situation was to go down as quickly as possible. At the base camp with a cup of hot tea, my sister told me that Ashot, the owner of the refuge, had come the morning after I left and told me there was a storm warning on Mount Elbrus. The elevators had been stopped and the slopes were closed for skiing. Gradually warming up, the annoyance of the bad weather that blocked the way to the top disappeared, and I realized that I had made the right decision. Although this time the mountain did not let me up, maybe protecting me from something bad, but there will be another time, because the mountains are conquered only by those who know how to wait. Guys, if you liked this video, please like it, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You can also support me with a donation. Links are in the video description. Bye bye.